Hey guys, you know what it is. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at LaunchpadPod. On our website, launchpadpod.com. Check us out on YouTube where you can see all our handsome boy faces. Today we're getting into something pretty fun. This is a genre that I really liked as a kid and still really like, but it's one of those ones that every now and then you get back into it and you're like, this is freaking awesome. I can't believe they sold this to us as kids. We're talking Tokusatsu. So let's get our little ranger belts ready and henshin. Biggest explosion ever.
I was like, this is why you need to watch us on YouTube, because Rumi just did a whole visual bit that you need to watch. And the skin tight, brightly colored leotard is what really made it.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
All right, welcome to the Launchpad Podcast. I'm Aaron.
I'm Matt.
Matt, today we're getting into some kind of fun. We don't normally do this, and I know this isn't a genre that you're super into, but as a kid, were you into Power Rangers?
No, because Power Rangers came out when I was like just a little too old, I think, and I was so excited for it because I thought it was going to be live action Voltron, and then I started it, and it was like the fighting was such low production value, and it was like all the fuck over the place. I had trouble keeping track of it. Like Voltron, you can kind of track, right? It makes like some sort of logical sense. But Power Rangers, I was like, this doesn't even look that cool, and I'm having trouble like following it. Yeah. So I watched a couple episodes. I obviously know what it's about, but never got into it. Were you into it?
Oh yeah, way into it. But again, way into it because the fighting and the colors and the explosions. But then when they were like doing people stuff, you're like, this is dumb. You better hurry. Okay, they're fighting again. Like,
well, I mean, let's not gloss over the attractiveness of the Pink Ranger out of costume.
Jamie Jo Johnson. Oh yeah. So yeah, we're talking Tokusatsu, which literally means special effects show, and it was started with Godzilla. I mean, that's where it started. We're talking 1954's Godzilla. We have the special effects. The guy who did the special effects, Ichi Tsuburaya, and the director, Ishiro Honda, and he was like, hey, I got this great idea. Let's put a guy in a suit, smash some buildings. And the Tsuburaya was like, I'm down, dude. This sounds so awesome. And Honda was like, hey, I need to describe it. I need a new word to describe it. What are we going to call it? And he goes, well, Tokusatsu, special effects show. And then he goes, okay. But I need something better to describe it. And he goes, what about bananas, sir? And he goes, no, I don't want to relate it to a tropical fruit. And he goes, what about batty? He's like, no, that's too animalistic. Zany? I don't know. We need something to hit him over the head with. And then Tsuburaya said, how about bonkers, sir? He said, bonkers. We need some bonkers tokusatsu up in this joint. And we brought somebody, we have a guest on the show today, somebody who knows a little something about bonkers tokusatsu joints. Rylend Grant, welcome to the Launchpad Podcast again.
How you guys doing? Glad to be back.
Yeah, it's been a while, but it's always a fun romp, and this is a fun topic. We're having you on to talk about this topic for a real fun reason. And I got to say, I'll say right now, I know a little bit more about Tokublaco more than I did before, because before Rylend's got a new book coming out, and he keeps describing it as a bonkers tokusatsu joint. And my first thought was that Tokusatsu was a Japanese director. And then I mentioned it to Rumi, and Rumi's like, no. And Rumi explained it to me. And I was like, okay, so I know what that is. I just don't necessarily know a lot about it or a lot about in that frame. But I can't for the life of me remember Tokujaku. So I know that it's one of my favorite ramen-based broths. It's like when I order my ramen, it's a miso-based really broth. So I know to do that. So I might have trouble remembering the word throughout the episode. I'm going to do my best, even though I really do know what it is. But now I know a little bit more. But this is going to be fun. So I guess, Rylend, tell us a little bit about your Toko and Razar backgrounds.
Yeah. First of all, like I love the intro. I mean, it was great. Hearing you come with some history and some knowledge. I mean, I feel like usually I'm starting from square one. and not so. Let me tell you, it's hard to, talk about my background. We can get more into the background, but it's hard to talk about it without talking about kind of the evolution of the project. And
we'll do both. Whatever, however you can wade us in. Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, let's wade into the water, because I think it relates pretty nicely to your intro, which again I thought was very good. And so I co-created, sort of co-conceived of Suicide Jockeys, my bonkers new tokusatsu fit, which is being released in comic shops in August via SourcePoint Press. You can go down to your local comic shop right now and put it on your pull list. Tell them you want it every month. We got 4 issues coming. Very bonkers, very crazy, great ride. Go check it out. But I co-created it with a guy named Brad Warner. Who is Brad Warner? I think we've talked about this before on the show. One of the very odd and more interesting lines in my bio is that I happen to be an ordained Soto Zen Buddhist monk. One of my claims to fame is that I actually taught Mike Tyson how to meditate. How's
that working?
It's working great. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna let my dog. All right, guys. My dog's driving me nuts. But Soto Zen is a Japanese tradition. And so because of about 15 to 20 years practicing Soto Zen and ultimately being ordained, I have a lot of weird connections back to Japan, and folks who work in Japan, and, after a twist and a turn, tokusatsu. So, through my years of Zen practice, I met a fellow ordained monk named Brad Warner, who happens to be a very distinguished author in his own right. He is kind of, one of the more prolific and important and affecting American Zen authors in like the last, 20 years or so. He is best known for a book called Hardcore Zen. And the subtitle there is Punk Rock, Monster Movies, and the Truth About Reality. But it's a great book. I mean, it's sold like, hundreds of thousands of copies, but it is kind of widely known as kind of the American Zennies, like technical manual. And Brad has this interesting story. He was, he grew up in Akron. He went to Kent State. He was a punk rocker, who kind of got fed up with, being a kind of a liberal guy, like life in the Reagan era, 80s. And he kind of fell out and he moved to Japan. And he moved to Japan specifically to make monster movies. He, kind of grew up kind of like I did. I mean, my first interaction with tokusatsu was, we all had like the UHF channels. There were sure. 2 of them in Detroit. There was 20 and 50 WKBD, and every weekend during the day, WKBD TV 50 played weird, crazy tokusatsu stuff for a couple of hours, and I was like glued to it. And I didn't, I was a kid, I didn't fully understand it, but it was like Triple Fighter, Spectre Man. There was something called Poseidon that really grabbed me, because there was time travel and dinosaurs and vehicles and stuff like that, and you can actually see a lot of Poseidon in Suicide Jockeys. But Brad was even more steeped in this stuff, and it was like his passion growing up. And so he decides, he has this kind of like early life crisis, decides, I'm tired of this. I need to like follow my dreams. And actually he writes to people at Zubaraya Productions, founded by Zubaraya, the guy you were talking about in the intro, the actual founder of Godzilla, in Japan. And he ends up with a job, as an executive, as a producer at Zubaraya Productions. And so, Zubaraya Productions has, they've made dozens of tokusatsu shows over the years. I mean, since, the 60s or whatever, but they are best known for making all of the Ultraman shows. Yeah. And so Brad moved to Japan, and he was for about a dozen years an executive, a producer on Ultraman. And he also found Zen there. Was ordained himself. He brings, his tradition back to the United States. He meets me, and we kind of hit it off over a mutual love of Zen and tokusatsu and all of this stuff. And we have thought for a long time that tokusatsu didn't get a fair shake in the States. It has kind of a cult following. It has a niche sort of audience, but it's never really been cool. It's never been badass. It's never been, awesome. There's never been like the $1 billion tokusatsu movie, Yeah. And so we didn't think that was right or fair or anything. And so the idea was for us to come together and to do tokusatsu for like the like hungry American action movie fan. And I've been on the show before, but it's been a while. My background is my day job is I write poppy action movies. I've written movies for Ridley Scott, J.J. Abrams, John Woo, Luc Besson, Justin Lin, F. Gary Gray. My biggest claim to fame is that I have written for the directors of 6 of the 9 Fast and the Furious movies at this point. And so kind of what we were looking to do with this is kind of do like Voltron meets the Fast and the Furious, right?
Well, I'm going to jump in because since you said Fast and the Furious, at what point are they just going to do it? They know they want to. At what point is just like Vin Diesel and Ludacris going to be like, it's like Ludacris is like, I'm the fist, and like Vin Diesel's like, I'm the head, and they like form into Fast and the Furious.
Yeah, I want to see Vin Diesel put his hands up like that, do that, and then what's attack?
Yeah, do the henshin move, and they all just like transform into a giant Fast and the Furious thing and fight giant monsters. Yeah. Like they're heading in that direction. Those movies are so bananas to begin.
It is, yeah. It is coming, and the joke is always like, well, they're going to space next, and I haven't seen the 9th one yet. Have you guys seen the 9th one?
No, not yet.
I've seen whispers on the internet that Tyrese and Ludacris are briefly in space. So I don't. It may have been a joke, but I've seen it so often that I'm starting to think that there might be a moment. I mean, here's the thing: can you get more ludicrous? Not that ludicrous, but actually ridiculous. Then I mean, I worked with F. Gary Gray right after, kind of during Fast 8. And can you get more ridiculous than someone driving a Ferrari on like on a frozen sea being chased by a Russian submarine?
I know it's so wild, and those movies they know what they are, and it's fun. They make it fun. And here's the thing about tokusatsu. I want to give a little bit of my background. My first foray into Hollywood, when I was trying to get a job, I was working at Target, and I got a job on a tokusatsu show called Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, produced by Steve Wang.
Awesome.
And I got to work on this show, and I got to work with the stunt teams, and I got to see them perform, and they literally brought all the suits out, all the monster suits, and what they were trying to do, and it was very tough because they were trying to bring it to America, and they were trying to make it badass. Steve Wang wanted it to be serious, and the show dealt with some serious shit. Like, there was revenge. Like, this guy, I say in quotes, kills this dude's brother. The show couldn't kill off another character. That would have been too violent for a kid's show. But like in the world, when they quote unquote vented somebody, that was the word they used. They got banished to this like crystal prison. You basically killed him. Okay. So he kills this guy's brother because he thinks he's doing a heroic thing. He's like, I'm going to get but it's revenge. And those deep like themes of revenge was pretty mature for a kid's show. And the Japanese producers were like, we want it to be funnier. And they were like, we want it to be more badass. And they were like, so there's always this battle between the goofiness and the fighting. But because we reused a lot of footage from a different Kamen Rider show, Kamen Rider Ryuki, and then would shoot a bunch of new stuff too to kind of blend it all together. It was really a cool show to work on, to see the action. Man, they go hard. They brought over a whole team from Japan to be in the suits and to just kick ass all day. One guy like broke his collarbone, and then they found out at the end of the day, he's like, I need to go to the hospital now. And they're like, whoa, what happened? He's like, I broke my collarbone early in the morning. And they're like, and you fought all day? He's like, yeah, I couldn't leave work. And it's like, hats off.
If he was really good, like if he was a really good, I don't know, part of tokusatsu, his bones would have been able to join back together. You know what I mean? He would have been able to like yell, and there would have been like a flash of lightning, and he would have put it back together. Yeah. Kamen Rider is interesting too. And like I said, I didn't know a lot about this. I didn't know this specific subgenre of Japanese movies, especially like it's kind of kaiju movie, but it's not exactly kaiju movie.
Yeah.
I did some research, and Kamen Rider was one of the biggest splashes that made here in America, because not many Japanese tokusatsu movies and shows really found a good foothold here. If anything, they found a foothold here with merchandise and toys, because there's a lot of toys for shows and shit that we never saw here, but are over there in Japan. But Rylend's trying to bring that back here, at least starting off in comic book form, right?
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think you've sort of alluded to it. You kind of sussed it out, where it's like there was this goofy tone that this stuff has never been able to kind of divorce itself from, and then even if they try, they'll get too serious, they'll get too too harsh, too intense. It's like there's always been a battle for tone, you know what I'm saying? And then also, like, I mean, it's about who it's aimed at, right? I mean, I still think Kamen Rider is, I mean, they want kids to like it, they want kids to buy toys, I mean, Kamen Rider is interesting because, like, there's so much of it. So the beauty of Kamen Rider is there's so many incarnations that, like, you can kind of find your version of it. And it's not something like, you don't have to, even though there have been 10 versions of it, you don't have to like have seen the first 5 versions to start watching the 6th version and like it. And so that ends up being really accessible and really interesting. I mean, that's still kind of like really, I don't know what to say. It still feels really goofy to me. And so for us, like, it was about taking all of the stuff that we loved about tokusatsu, and we're kind of not the first. We're kind of not the first people to do stuff like this. I mean, it's like, when I was kind of exchanging some messages with Matt over the course of the week, and he said something about, like, well, we want to talk about your influences, and of course, like, there are the primary tokusatsu influences here that I went over. When I was a kid and I was like just sucking up, Triple Fighter and Spectre Man and Voltron, like the most of us, and Poseidon, and there were those classic things. And I mean, what I did love about Poseidon, it was the vehicles. They had this really cool, badass vehicle that was this armored thing that they went to, and it was the same thing we loved about Voltron. Like, oh, this vehicle is amazing, and there are several vehicles, and they combine it into one and do something cool and different. All of that stuff is cool and awesome. But again, bleed the goofiness, the slapstickiness out of it, and I think you have something. Do you guys remember there was a show that it was very briefly on network television when we were younger called Highwaymen? Do you remember this? No. It was almost like U.S. Marshals in like a Mad Max kind of world, and they drove around in these kind of big rigs that had other elements to it. Like the principal character had this, it was almost like an 18-wheeler semi truck. And the cab converted into a helicopter, and then he could go chase after people. And it was like, he was just kind of like traveling the earth, like Kane and Kung Fu, like, solving problems and, killing criminals. And, and there was like all of the stuff that we loved about tokusatsu was in this thing, where you had the vehicles and the vehicles that transformed and did stuff, and they fought bad guys and they fought crime, but it was in this kind of grounded Mad Maxy world. And that was really interesting. And so when I was, I saw that a little later. And so it was like the obvious progression for me, going from like something goofy like Spectre Man, Triple Fighter, and then moving on to Highwaymen, which felt like more me and more interesting. And then
I'm looking at this right now, and he's not kidding when he says it's a big rig with a helicopter cab. Yeah. And it's pretty cool looking, but you're right. This is absolutely like an Americanized version of kind of what Japan was doing in the 80s. You can definitely see those influences. And especially weird too, because there is a culture in Japan of like souped up big rigs. Like they do these really flashy souped up pop big rigs. So this is really interesting. I've never seen this, but I'm looking at it now. I'm like, I want to watch one.
It's fun. I mean, it's fun to go back and look at it, and it is like, again, like they're essentially like U.S. Marshals. And so there is almost like a justified nature to it, like it's Raylan Givens rolling into like a big rig with a helicopter cab. And I mean, it is cool and it is interesting. And like, it was stuff like that where, I mean, the show is in a lot of ways it's a miss, but, there's so much interesting stuff about it that it never left me. And so, when I, a couple of decades later, when I'm in Hollywood and a working screenwriter and, have some comic book cred and all that stuff, these are the things that are still in the back of my mind. And it's like you kind of put these things on the shelf and you don't know what you're going to do with them. And then when you're looking for the next thing or opportunity meets this or that, you kind of pull it down and dust it off. And it was something like that. And so it's like, I mean, if we were going to do it, we were going to, I feel like they've never worked great in the States because they've never divorced themselves of the need to like be aimed at children, of the goofy tone, of the slapstickiness and the camp of the, and to a certain degree, you have to like acknowledge that stuff. I mean, we have some like, again, it's
well, I'll bring that up in the background of your panel. One of my favorite things about this comic book, it's when they're at the conventions. And it's not even what's in the panel; it's what's in the background of the panel. You guys have Easter eggs for days of Henshin stuff, a Kamen Rider, Mass Rider, Power Rangers, Godzilla. You guys have that stuff all in the background, and it's a fun little Easter egg hunt for sure.
Well, yeah, and then we have the A-Team van and the Ferrari for Magnum PI, and it's again, it is this. It was the beauty of doing this with Brad, where it was like, I am making sure that the kid that grew up loving American action movies is being served, and he is making sure that the Tokusatsu fan is giving an authentic experience, even though we're kind of giving them a curveball of a Tokusatsu joint here. But because of that, because like we feel like we're including them and we're giving them a seat at the table, I feel like this is really going to kind of translate. It was important to find the right tone and the right approach to it. And again, like, Fast and the Furious is a good comp because it's a big movie and this is really about a non-traditional family and that sort of thing. But, I feel like it's, there's more heart, there's more soul in this than those movies are maybe like considered to have, even though I will argue with anyone that says that. In terms of its examination of a non-traditional family, this has more in common with Boogie Nights than maybe Fast and the Furious does. We try to minus the prosthetics. However, to me, the perfect tone I found in another kind of subgenre of action. You guys probably know it. Well, you definitely know it. You probably love it. You better love it, or I may terminate this podcast early. There was a period of action movies in the 90s that were big, they were bad, they were swaggery and testosterone driven, and they were awesome. And they were sort of epitomized by movies like Face Off, like Con Air, like The Rock. The masterpiece of the entire genre may be Armageddon. And again, they were just big and bad and ridiculous and Howling at the Moon and they were fed by movies like Die Hard and 48 Hours.
It's the post muscle era, and that is it's a very true thing where it's like where now it's Bruce Willis and Nick Cage are the action heroes, when in the 80s it was all Schwarzenegger, Stallone. It's
oily muscles.
Yeah, it's the post-muscle era. It still has all the testosterone, but they had done those movies, so now they're trying to do something different. And I love that, your main character in this, he might resemble a famous action star from that era.
Well, it's on purpose because like all of this stuff is referential. I mean, what we've done is, I mean, those movies were unapologetically un-PC. You know what I'm saying? You watch those, and I love them. I mean, you guys can see behind me. Oh, I guess it's below the camera now, but I have a whole VHS setup going on down here. Oh, and nice. So while I'm writing, I write, for whatever, 8 to 10 hours a day, every day. While I'm sitting here, I pop in old VHS movies, and so this is what I watch. It's every day. It's just Die Hard's on in the background, Armageddon's on in the background, the Con Air's on in the background, it calms me. It's like a white noise for me that is very pleasant and very interesting. but I mean, those movies are problematic, and sometimes they are humorously problematic, sometimes not. This is our book, Suicide Jockeys, takes place on kind of two time planes, right? There is this thing that happened 10 years ago. 10 years ago, this team, they were the biggest, baddest monster fighting crew in the game. They stood between, the earth and anything that sort of meant it harm for years. They were celebrated. They were the biggest heroes around. And then this mission goes horribly wrong. Kind of the mother figure of the non-traditional family is lost. And that causes infighting and ugliness. And the team is kind of torn apart. And so in the present day, the team is fractured. They're in kind of separate corners of the globe. They haven't talked to each other. There's tons of bad blood. Basically, like short and sweet, a scientist walks out of the shadows and says, "You remember that thing that went wrong? There is now this opportunity to maybe to correct it, to bring Mama back." And so our protagonist, our father figure, has to kind of slap the family back together. They have to bury years of bad blood and kind of head off and right this wrong. But that is a long-winded way of saying, so our protagonist, Denver, he does resemble a certain, figure from that time period. But that was the idea, is that, it's almost like he's walked right off the set of Die Hard or Con Air or any one of these movies. And he is that swaggery, swinging dick, overly testosterone action hero, who has not changed. For any number of reasons. It is a case of Arrested Development. And now we are in this time of this is a socially conscious time. We have changed more socially and politically in the last 10 years than, in the previous 50 combined, probably.
Yeah.
And he has not caught up yet. And he is trying very hard and very admirably, but he is a remarkably flawed character. And so part of the exploration here is like, okay, well, if you just kind of plucked Bruce Willis out of Die Hard and put him in a movie now, like, how could that possibly work? And in the ways it doesn't work, like, that's kind of, those are the ways in which this project is kind of glorious. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like watching a very entertaining, like, social car wreck, right?
Sure. So, well, I mean, in that scenario, you can definitely see why Holly Gennaro keeps her maiden name. So, do you guys want to hear a brief tokusatsu story involving Danny Trejo?
Always.
What if I said
everything is better with Danny Trejo? But
if I said no, just to be condescending, like just to be would it split the vote? Or you get a vote too? Zoom
now. Boop. It's like, boop.
No, fuck yeah.
How do I boot Matt? Okay, so I'm a PA on this Bonkers Tokusatsu Common Writer, and I had one job: don't let anybody through this door. I was on a lockup. Don't let anybody through this door. That's my job. That's all I have to do today, and it's going pretty easy. Nobody's come to the door. Suddenly, I hear, "Hey, I'm going to do a terrible Danny Trejo."
Yeah. Be very careful here. You don't want to get yourself canceled.
He says, "Hey, do you know Jimmy Sprague?" And I go, "Yeah, that's my boss." He goes, "Tell him there's a big Mexican down here and he's pissed." And I was like, Aaron, for Jimmy, I'm not even supposed to be on the walkie. And they're like, and he's like, "What do you want? What is it?" And I was like, there's a gentleman down here and he's angry. And Danny was not happy that I did not say word for word what he said, but I wasn't going to say that over the radio. And I was like, "I think you should come down here." And he was so mad. My boss was so mad. He comes storming down and sees Danny Trejo. And it was suddenly that scene from Star Wars where Han Solo sees Lando for the first time and they pretended to be mad at each other for a few seconds. They went, "Ah, you son of a bitch," and hugged it out. And you're like, this is ridiculous. And he's like, "Danny, I'm working on the show. It's like Power Rangers like this." He's like, "Oh, I love Power Rangers." And he's like, "Aaron, show him around." And then he grabs me. My boss grabs me. He goes, "Don't let him play with the weapons or the costumes." And I was like, okay. Cut to 3 minutes later, Danny Trejo's putting on the helmet. He's waving the swords around. He's shooting the guns. Like, it's just, I couldn't stop him. What was I going to say? "Mr. Awesome. Trejo, I'm not supposed to let you wear this." But he was having a blast. And like, he was filming a movie there. And the rest of the week, he'd come by and be like, "What's up?" He signed my Machete poster. It was really cool.
Dude, you're missing the point. You were a PA on that movie?
On the show, yeah.
and Danny Trejo, as big and unique looking as he was, what you needed to do was get 5 or 6 other PAs and fucking combined to take Danny Trejo on. I would watch that show. That's a Tonka Tretsu joint if I ever heard of one.
But him wearing the Kamen Rider helmets was hysterical because he had the long hair at the time. He's like got the helmet on. He's holding the swords, waving around. He's just, man, it was funny.
Before he became a donut kingpin.
Yeah, man. This was before the donuts. This was before
before he had all that donut money.
Yeah, he was still taking the straight to DVD movies.
Yeah, well, slumming it in Michael Mann fare and stuff like that. There's have you guys listened to the Rewatchables on the Ringer Podcast Network? They go through old movies. It's a great podcast. You should listen to it. It's one of these things where you can kind of go through the feed and just pick up, oh, I love that movie, and they sort of celebrate it. But they have these categories, where it's like, okay, well, let's explore this about the movie. And one of the final categories was always, would this movie be better with Danny Trejo? And like the first 10, it was always hilarious, but they very quickly found that the answer, like no matter what, was always yes.
Yeah.
If you're doing like Sense and Sensibility, yes, it would. There's just no argument. It would still be better with Danny Trejo.
I mean, he always adds flavor.
Yeah, they had to retire the category because the answer was always yes. And so, for a while they sort of graduated to just saying like, obviously this would be better with with Danny Trejo, so we don't have to talk about it. And, since then they've stopped mentioning him, but I think that's very telling.
Well, as far as marquee value is concerned, Rylend, I remember you telling me about this book literally years ago because it has 2 really big, like real life celebrities in it. You have their likenesses and you use their actual real life names.
I don't know who you're talking about. Is there celebrities in this book?
Oh yeah, there's two.
Oh, really?
I mean, very handsomely drawn men in the book who are also very handsome in real life. They're handsome men, but they call themselves handsome boys. And you use their real life names, which I'm thinking will lead to royalties in the future, especially when the film gets big.
Yeah, it could be. I really should have got some paperwork signed. I think I never.
Well, I mean, now they have to play themselves in the movie, but if you guys can't figure it out, Rylend was kind and gracious and fun enough to put not only me and Aaron's likenesses in the book, because we've been in a couple comics before, but Rylend is the first guy to ever put our names in there too. We play producers. So Rylend, Aaron and I have read a couple issues now, but no issues are actually out yet. So why don't I let you divulge what you want to divulge about that? Because that's we're super jazzed about that.
About your involvement. Sure. I mean, I probably have to, again, back up and set the table a little bit. So my books, I very rarely tell a straightforward story, right? Mm-hmm. I've done enough.
We
of
know.
That.
We know.
Yeah, I've spent 15 years in Hollywood doing that, and my work got stale, and I was miserable. And I've been doing it for about 12 years, and I was looking at doing it for another 12 years, and I'm like, I'm not sure I can do this. And so part of moving over to comics was that, I mean, what you can do in movies right now, you can fit on a postage stamp. Like Hollywood, they make 5 different kinds of movies. They want you to write them a certain way. There's kind of no room for...
Do you want Marvel or DC, sir?
There you go. And so, again, I mean, I'm good at writing those movies, phoning them in. They bought my house, but, it was not inspiring. And so I was like, I don't know if I hate being the guy that complains about getting to write movies for a living, but I didn't know if I could do it for another 12 years and not crack and like move to Antarctica and look for meteorites or something. And so comics kind of saved my creative life. And part of that was that it's a playground. It is a creative, crazy, bonkers playground. You can tell any kind of story, any kind of way, as long as it is good, you will find an audience for it and it will be celebrated and embraced. And so when I got into comics, I made a promise that I was never going to tell a straightforward story. I was going to double down on picture and time and experimental elements and all of that stuff. I mean, if you go back to Banjax, like issue 2 of Banjax takes place from the point of view of a man who hasn't slept in 7 days. He's literally being driven mad. And so you're seeing things through his point of view. You have no idea what's real and what isn't. You're given no answers in the end. And so I mean, I'm known for doing stuff like this. And so, And so kind of as you alluded to, in this book, and I explore this in a lot of my books, I explored it in Aberrant and Banjax, like if there were actual tokusatsu heroes in the world, if there were people that beat back monsters and saved our lives, they would be like mega celebrities, right? They would be, they would just be massive stars. And so we explore what that would look like in a grounded way here, as grounded as you can do in like a tokusatsu book where monsters are coming out of the water and thrashing cities. But, again, 10 years ago, they were the biggest stars in the world. Now it's 10 years later and everybody is in a different place. And, you talked about there being conventions here. Well, I mean, I'm a comic creator who has for like the last 5 years had to do conventions and maybe I'm like a little bit comic famous, which isn't very famous, but when I go to a con, I have people lining up for autographs at my table and wanting to take pictures of me. And that's totally weird and foreign to me. And so I'm kind of exploring that with this, but it's like, but Denver, our protagonist used to be the biggest hero on the planet. Now he's like, in some like random, horrible corner of Autograph Alley on the con floor next to the bathroom, sandwiched between Lou Ferrigno and Eric Estrada, literally. And he spends his days trying to, like, as he says upsell mongoloids, trying to get them to buy bobbleheads and t-shirts. So not everybody has had that sort of problem. Like, his sort of I don't know, like the Ben Affleck to his Bruce Willis and Armageddon, his sort of like son figure has become kind of a megastar in a different sense. He was able to transition it to a huge career, not just about monsters. Like now he's basically like a judge on America's Got Idol, or like in these other TV shows. He's parlayed it into stardom. Yeah. He has become a Kardashian, essentially. He is now famous for being famous. And like you said, he's doing Pepsi commercials and hawking products. And he has this inane Kardashian-like reality show. And so, again, my bonker stuff, we spend about a third, at least, of issue 2 watching this guy's inane, terrible, but delightful Kardashian-like reality show. Mm-hmm. And you guys, you play the duplicitous producers of the show, where I've talked about this plot where it's like, okay, well, they realize, they lost the mother figure 10 years ago. Somebody's come out of the shadows, says we can save the mother. We can bring her back. We need to bring the family back together. So the protagonist is trying to bring the family back together. You guys see an opportunity. This could be good television. And you are trying to pit people against each other. And you were trying to force this to happen on camera. That's my favorite part, is that we want to see it. Like keep it rolling, keep the cameras rolling no matter what. It's like he wants to confront you, but he needs to do it on camera. Like, it's so perfect because I mean, Matt and I are definitely not that slimy, but I know we've had times where like, Matt, this could be a shit show. Matt's like, yeah, that's going to be great for the podcast. Yeah. So I had some fun with you guys. You guys have some good lines where it's, the character is having a crisis of conscience. Like you guys are advertising him, as a hero, and he's wondering, is he a hero anymore? I mean, that's kind of the thematics, like the character arc of the issue. And he's like, well, I'm not a hero anymore. I haven't been a hero for 10 years. I'm an actor now. And I believe it's you, Aaron, who says, well, okay, then act like a hero. Act like a fucking hero. Act like a fucking hero, and that kind of sums you guys up. And so it was fun. I mean, it was like, I needed, if I was going to explore that sort of corner of this thing, which was, I think it shows in the comic that I had a lot of fun with it. I needed some, I needed like Charles Foster Kane like characters being like, bring me the pictures and I'll give you the headlines. Wow, a Charles Foster Kane comparison. Like, well, that corner, like, sure, but in his publishing days, but yeah, there you go. And this is funny, and this will transition to like an actual question, but like Rylend, we've known Rylend for years now. He's helped us get a good foothold in some cool con experiences and stuff. And we've had him on the show to talk about a lot of different projects. He told us literally years ago about this book, that we were going to be in it. We were going to be these producers, and didn't give us too much more details, but we knew it was like a project that he was working on under construction.
And then a new book came out and we were like, oh, is that the one? He's like, no. I'm still doing that one. This is a different one. Then another book came out and another book. And every time a new book comes out, we usually get together. Rylend lets us check it out a little early. We do, we either have him on the show or talk about it on the show, whatever. And we were like, finally, this is the one. This is the one. But it's been years. And I've noticed some stuff while reading. We read the first 2 issues so far. While reading the first 2 issues, Rylend, there's definitely some stuff in there that is way more current than when you originally started making the book. So I guess to put that into a question, how much of that book is inspired or has to do with like recent events within the last, year or two?
Well, that's a really good question. And it does take years to kind of get these things into a comic shop sometimes. And that was made more problematic by the pandemic, right?
Sure.
This was set to be announced by a different publisher, a big publisher,
right,
last February or last March, and then it was comic shops closing, pencils down everywhere. I went from, and then everybody at the company got fired. And this is, I'm not going to name the company, but it's on.
We know because we knew people at the company and we watched that happen too. So we saw the same thing from a different angle.
Yeah. And so I go from being in contact with 3 people there every day. We're planning this announcement and this publication and all this stuff to not having a working email address over there overnight. And then like the new regime doesn't want, there was this negotiation for a couple of months, but it's like the new regime doesn't really want anything to do with what the old regime had. And finally it just made sense for me to take the book back and take it somewhere else. And, but then we're in the middle of a pandemic, everybo's shut down, and most companies are scheduled like a year and a half out already. So, but I found a great home at Source Point, and that was awesome. That's, but that's beside the point. But yeah, it's, I thought it was really interesting to kind of, when I was writing the book, to tap into what's happening now. This is a time travel story. The larger kind of like drama is about a villain of sorts. You don't know who has kind of gone back in time and has started to sort of change the timeline subtly. And there are some people who are for some reason aware of it, and most people aren't. But the people who are aware of it get together and they start comparing notes, and they realize they have to do something about it. And the only thing that ends up working, their last kind of Hail Mary shot at actually fixing this, doing something about it, is rounding up this old team of drunken hooligans and sending them, off to do this thing. But there's a case that's made at the end where it is hard for these people to believe that this is happening. But then some guy makes the case like, look at all that's happening in the world, right? And this case has been made by scientists. We've all read the articles saying that like there is so much random insanity happening right now that the only legitimate scientific explanation for it is that we're living in the Matrix, that we're living in a simulation. That's how bonkers this is. And so this kind of explores like, a weird take on that idea that, look at all the shit that's happened in the last, especially the last year, but the last couple of years, the last 5 years, whatever. The only explanation, the only way to explain all of this insanity is that someone has gone, back in time, kind of created this alternate timeline, and is playing historical puppet master, is manipulating things to be this awful.
And you've added giant monsters into the mix as well. So it's like not just pandemics and civil unrest, it's giant monsters too. So that definitely kicks it up a notch.
But my question is, does it? Because I've added one thing onto it. That's the only other buy-in. You know what I'm saying? Like if you sit and list, because we have a character that does it. It's like obviously like insane political divide, a debilitating pandemic, a coup at the Capitol, the election, all of this insanity. And then I don't know that monsters coming out of the water and destroying cities is that big a leap after all of that. It's literally, if we went back in time 10 years and you said like, a coup at the Capitol or a monster coming out of the water and destroying London, like I don't know that I don't know that one is more likely than the other, right?
I'm going to tell you this right now. So I always try to look at situations because, you know, I don't necessarily write scripts for a living, but I dabble in writing stories and having ideas. And, you know, if somebody said, pitch me something, I got something in the pocket. And I was trying to figure, how do you take the experience of a pandemic and turn it into a horror movie or something like that? Because all the best horror movies draw out modern fears. You know, Night of the Living Dead, one of my all-time favorite, was the fear of autonomy. People just becoming mindless zombies is a true horror. And I came to the conclusion that a kaiju movie is a great way to assess the fears that the pandemic created. Because if you're being attacked by a kaiju, you're trapped in your house. You can't leave because of the danger. And this idea of another out there, this came from another country. Kaiju movies often have some of that xenophobia that comes out of, you know, the monster attacking your town. I think it's a very apt analogy.
Yeah, there are really interesting philosophical books written about this, about what the monsters in the original Godzilla movies actually meant and signified. You know, coming out of the ocean, and it was, you know, fear of nuclear this and fear of Western that, and fear of this past and that past, and and you know, it was not a monster. It was this very real political social fear personified. And so that's what we're playing with. And Matt, you hit it right on the head to get, you know, directly back to your question is, so we made this a few years back. And it still worked back then when we were talking about the Patriots Super Bowl comeback and the Oscar flub and minor but very crazy shit like that, right? And so if we had released when we were originally going to release, that still would have played and would have worked and it would have been fine. However, then politics, then pandemic, then all of these other things, and you start to prep the book for publication now. And one, those references seem a bit dated, but now like the line has shifted so far. You know what I'm saying? It you know, whereas like we were moving an inch every year, we moved 10 miles this last year or so, and so we had to revise. And so literally. You saw pages, references that were changed, that were redrawn like a month ago.
Almost as if somebody went back in time. And
that's what I was going to say. I feel like Rylend writing this book, you know, a couple of years ago, started off this fucking hole in time bullshit where now everything is a little bit different. So I'm not blaming the coup on Rylend. I'm not blaming anything. I'm not saying that pandemic was his fault because he was fucking up the time stream. But watch for kaiju, everybody. Just keep an eye out, you know?
I mean, as two podcasters who have fucked with the time stream, we know.
I think I'm, I just think I'm onto something. And so if I disappear suddenly, you know, if you guys send me an email and you just don't get a response.
There's nothing there.
If my wife is looking for me, like, you know, I'm onto something, and, you know, there's a microfilm hidden somewhere. I will send you guys some info and you know, just,
I would love to get involved with intrigue.
Just carry on the fight.
I'm not just whistleblowing. I'm just whistling. I saw the latest Godzilla movie. I know the power of podcasting.
Awesome.
Oh,
gotta love
goodness.
it. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, we're about an hour. Tell people what they can do to make this book the best for you. Like, what can they do? Where can they buy it? Pre-ordering. I know pre-ordering is really important to get it in your comic book shop. Tell people where they can get it. What they need to do.
Yeah. So go down to your local comic shop and just tell them that you want Suicide Jockeys and you want it every month. Our first arc is 4 issues, and there will no doubt be more after that. But the first trade is 4 issues. Yeah. So go down there. You can pre-order it right now. The first issue drops August 26th. And then we'll have an issue a month for 3 more months after that. And so
how about them variant covers that you're famous for?
Yeah. We have plenty of like really amazing variant covers. I am now famous, if not infamous, for my my variant covers. Do you guys use the video? Does it go on YouTube or something like that?
Yeah.
You are. So I'm going to step back here. I know this is great radio, but so we've done a lot of crazy covers. I mean, with it started out with Aberrant. We had a Zamunda coming to America variant at San Diego Comic-Con, which was like a big deal for a lot of people. We've done like Weekend at Bernie's variants and Point Break variants.
That Billy D. Williams Colt 45 variant.
Yeah, Aberrant works every time. Exactly. I probably have that up here too. But then we whoa!
Disaster.
I destroyed my entire. I just kaiju'd my. There you go, right there. He's actually holding the regular issue. Yeah. But then we continued it with Banjax, Aberrant and Banjax available in fine comic shops everywhere and on Amazon and Comixology. But we did our Rocky IV variant that was a big deal, and we did our Gremlins variant, which was also a big deal. And so we are rocking and rolling with the variant covers on this one on Suicide Jockeys. The issue 1 variant cover, the regular variant, I should say, is an homage to the original Roadhouse poster. Which might be like, my favorite cover we've ever done. You got to see it. If you look online, you'll find it, but that's awesome. We did an amazing, Bullet, tribute cover, for issue 2. Which may just like as a piece of art, may be the best variant cover we've ever done. And the artists on the actual book, Davi Leon Diaz, Juan Joko Triano, they did the whole run of Aberrant, which we won a Ringo Award for, was nominated for 2 others. They also did my last Kickstarter book, The Peacekeepers. The variant covers are being done by Fabio Alves and Edson Ferreira, who were both nominated for Ringo Awards for their work on my book Banjax. So big time artists doing big time covers. The issue 3 variant is a Top Gun variant, which is amazing. It is actually my second Top Gun variant because I did a Top Gun volleyball scene playing with the boys variant for Aberrant, which was nice. This is Suicide Jockeys is about guys climbing into armored planes and kicking ass. And so this is a more straightforward, like Flyboy Top Gun cover. And it's very fitting. So that's great. And the issue 4 variant is literally being colored right now. And it is wondrous and amazing. It is a Mr. T cereal box variant.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes.
And so that is wonderful. And then actually, like, the variant cover game is going to be stepped up here because Source Point Press has this amazing, it is a retailer exclusive variant program where kind of retailers can sign on and they get their own, I have the variants, limited variants. And so there will be 10 retailer variants on issue 1. And they're bringing in like big heavy hitter artists. And sometimes those artists have their own takes on things. Sometimes they come to me and they're like, hey, we want to, build this with you. What movie are we going to focus on? And so there will be a long-winded way of saying issue 1 will have 12 different covers. And each one more glorious and wondrous than the next. Some of them extremely limited. And there'll be foil and metal and all that stuff. So there's going to be plenty of good Suicide Jockeys collectibles out there. So
Rylend, you'll probably be excited to hear this. And Rumi, this was a surprise for you, but from my local comic shop, I've already ordered the first 2 issues, including variants. So whatever they didn't have 12 variants in their catalog, but Rumi, you have the first 2 issues coming.
Nice. Yeah, well, these are again, those are retailer exclusives. Those other things. So you actually have
that's gonna be go to that store.
You have to go to that store online or whatever. But
that's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, those are gonna be hard to get a hold of. But yeah, you can go into any comic shop and get the regular and the standard variant. And
Launchpad has already pre-ordered theirs. You guys got to do yours too. Let's keep Rylend in business here, cranking out these fucking awesome books.
Yeah, so we can keep reading some awesome stuff. Get him back on the show for the next one. Before we leave, I want every one of us, I'm going to going around the table, and I want you guys to, if somebody needs to get into some tokusatsu, they don't know, they're like, I don't know anything about it, where should I start? I want you guys to give one recommendation. So we'll think about that for a second. I'll vamp. And while I'm vamping, I'll just say this, guys, follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at LaunchpadPod, our website, launchpadpod.com. Check us out on that YouTube channel. I love hearing from everybody. Guys, if you are into tokusatsu, let us know what your jam is. Is it an anime? Is it one of the live action? Were you hardcore into Power Rangers? You watched every iteration, even the one where they were pirates? Come on, let us know. We love hearing from you guys. So, recommendation time. Rylend, you got one?
I have two, and I'll try to make them short. I think the best point of entry, the one that really grabbed me when I was a kid, it's an American movie directed by Charles Band called Robot Jocks.
Yes.
Fuck yeah! I just watched that the other day.
Stop motion animation. It is fucking incredible. I mean, the quick pitch is basically that it is after a nuclear war, World War III. The world has been devastated. War is outlawed. Disagreements over territory, mineral rights, or whatever are now settled in an arena by men who climb into by robot jocks who climb into huge mecha, and they battle it out. And one representing the Russian Federation, one representing what is essentially America at that point. And whoever wins, wins the territory, wins the mineral rights, and it is awesome. I mean, I love the stop motion so much. There is intrigue, there is spy stuff. That's great. And then if you just want a great monster movie, what doesn't get enough credit as like an amazing monster movie is the final film that Tony Scott directed before he died, is a film called Unstoppable with Denzel Washington and Chris Pine, and it is a runaway train movie. They work for
that in theaters.
They work for the train commission or whatever, and a twist and a turn, and this train ends up kind of heading off on its own full speed. And it is going to, for various reasons, basically crash into the tiny Pennsylvania town where Denzel Washington's daughter lives. And it is the best monster movie I've ever seen in my life. This train is Godzilla. It is a runaway monster. It cannot be reasoned with. It is living, it is breathing, and Denzel Washington and Chris Pine have to find a way to stop it. It's great. It has everything that you want out of a monster movie. And so I would rewatch it with that in mind, and it's going to fucking blow your skull.
I will. I've seen that before. I've seen it at least twice, and I remember thinking, "Oh, that was good," but I didn't think about it in that frame. I like that.
So, Rumi, hit me with what's your tokusatsu joint?
Like I said, like Tokoblaco is new to me, so I don't know as much about it as I could, but the research that I did on like traditional tokusatsu, it seems like Super Sentai would be a real cool starting point. It sounds like that is, to use Rylend's word, fucking bonkers. Like it's bonkers all over the place. It has all the pieces. I know more like kaiju stuff. I'm down with Robot Jocks since I about fucking giant fighting kaiju movies. But it sounds to me like Super Sentai is at least where I'm going to start looking at some more traditional shit, because it says like stuff teleports, stuff explodes, stuff has fucking lightning. People get powers when they yell shit. Yes, they have to yell the shit to get the powers. It's all this like weird fucking stuff that like the less you think about it, the more fun it is. I think Super Sentai is good with that. But I'll throw a non-traditional in, especially after Rylend did. But friend of the show, Zeb Wells, directed a shit ton of episodes of Titan Maximum for Robot Chicken, Adult Swim, Titan Maximum, and it's Voltron, but like rated R for Adult Swim. And it's like, let's punch the shit out of it. Is their like chant when their robots combine to make the giant robot. It's exactly what I want that to be from that. If you guys haven't seen that, it's funny as shit. And it's all stop motion claymation stuff with robots and a giant robot and creatures. It's just fun as shit.
That's awesome. So I'm going to drop, this is a pretty traditional one. It's a movie. It's on Amazon Prime. It's called Super Inframan. And this thing is ridiculous. It'd be perfect for Shitty Movie Sunday. It's hysterical, big monsters, big robots, and a guy in a suit kicking ass. And I think it's hysterical. I loved it so much because it's all the action you want, all the explosions you want, barely makes any sense. This guy's a scientist and they're like, we need somebody to sacrifice their life for Super Inframan. And he's like, I will volunteer. Does it hurt? And they're like, immensely. He's like, let's go. And they like
awesome.
Trade out his organs for metal parts so he can turn into a giant robot fighter. I'm in. I mean, it's
Don't
great.
do it.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
Bring on the immense hurt. I'm fine with
and if
that.
I got to drop another one, it's one of my all-time favorites. It's not really in the same vein as Power Rangers, but it's more in the veins of like Aliens. And this was called The Green Slime, and I love this movie so much. If anything, the intro music is like wailing guitars and this guy screaming, "Green slime!" And these people find some green slime, and it turns into these tentacle monsters that like attack a space station and shoot lasers out of their eyes. It's great. It's so good. And both those movies. If you want to break into some tokusatsu, I mean, aside from Godzilla and, Gamera, These are all some great options. I really like it. So, Rylend, let people know where they can follow you. What's your social media?
Yeah, I am at Rylend Grant on social media. That's RYLENDGRANT. I always spell it because it's not a real name. My parents kind of drunkenly arranged letters and saddled me with it, and now I have to spell it for you. But yeah, everything I'm up to, you'll see there. And
plug your podcast, man.
Yeah, I was about to do that. I do a podcast, if you're a comics fan, called The Writer's Block with David Avalone, who is a prolific comic writer in his own right. He writes the Elvira comics for Dynamite, and he does Drawing Blood with Kevin Eastman.
We've had him on the show for that. Yeah, Drawing Blood, cannot recommend that more. That's a great book.
Yeah, it's great. And Avalone is one of my best friends in comics. And the comic was kind of born out of the sort of void that was created by this pandemic. Obviously, like the whole convention scene shut down. And we got our kind of like convention Jones kind of serviced by, like in a panel sense, by some of these online cons. But what we couldn't sort of find the right outlet for was something called BarCon, which happens after a long day at the con. After a long day at the con, the creators get together and they go to the bar across the street and we shoot the shit, right? And it's wonderful. It's amazing. It's camaraderie. And we couldn't find that anywhere when we're all kind of sequestered in our own homes. So Avalone and I kind of created it, via Zoom, almost like we're doing now. And so every week we have a couple of creators on, our close friends, and we just kind of shoot the shit. And it starts out with a comics business topic. And it is insightful, and you do have these great creators kind of giving you their, sort of inside view on things. And then it sort of degenerates slowly but surely into us arguing over like which is the best Star Trek captain or whatever. But it's a great show. It's been great fun. I think we're 35 weeks in right now, and a lot of momentum. And we've had great guests. I mean, we've had Kevin Eastman, we've had Matt Fraction, Stan Sakai, John Layman. We just had Rodney Barnes on. Great people, great creators doing great books, and something like, I don't know, 60 Eisner nominees at this point. And so it gets better every week. So check it out. And just search for The Writer's Block on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your ear crack. And it's available on YouTube, also on the Comic Core YouTube channel. So
awesome, man. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We'll definitely have you back when the next project or more Suicide Jockeys drops. Guys, like I said, follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, Launchpad Pod, YouTube. Matt, we should blast this thing off, buddy.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Rylend, you remember this?
So I don't know.
You do a high five, you're going to swing it in sideways.
Yeah.
Then you turn it into a rocket ship,
Oh, wow.
And then you blast off with a raspberry. So we're going to do it all at the same time. Normally, we're like doing it as a high five and everybody's slapping each other, but this is how we do it on Zoom. All right, 3, 2, 1. Yes, we've been the Rocketeers, Launchpad Pod, and we are out.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.